Hey everyone, I'm Kiting is Hard. I'm the analyst for Team Hades with the Olympus Gaming organization. Welcome to the second video of Advanced League of Legends Macroplay. The title of the series has changed from Advanced League Macros, as someone pointed out that macros can be misunderstood as macro instruction when its intended meaning is macro play. Today we'll be going over early game jungling. Early game, the jungler has the most influence around the map by far, and as such, it is the jungler's responsibility to not only figure out where the enemy jungler is, but counter-gank him, out-pressure him, and still maintain CS. Oftentimes, people will choose to farm or gank at bad times or places, resulting in the enemy jungler picking up a lead off a successful gank and snowballing the game. There's a lot to talk about for early game jungling, so I will divide this topic into two separate videos. This video will cover how to track the enemy jungler to gain and maintain a lead, and the next video will talk about when and how to gank, dive, and counter gank properly, as well as how to make more proactive plays around the map. Everything the jungler does is based off of information. The more information one jungler has over the other, the bigger of an advantage that jungler has to make his decision of where to gank, where to counter gank, etc. This information also allows you to better assess the risk and potential reward of different decisions you can make. The goal early game as a jungler should be to gain as much information you can and then decide what to do with that information. To clear up some common misconceptions about jungling. If a lane is warded, it's not worth spending time to try to gank it. This idea is probably my biggest pet peeve. There are so many ways to enter a lane. Just because one path is warded does not mean you can't gank from a different path. Not just that, but you could also tell your laner to engage a fight, even if it's a losing fight, and while the enemy is distracted with a trade, blast plant or move quickly through the ward and reach the fight before the enemy realizes that you're there. If a lane is losing, don't gank for them. This idea is actually true in some cases, but false in others. If your top laner is 0-2 and on a champion like Riven, it is still very possible to gank top and turn the lane in your top laner's favor. Of course, the opportunity cost of this might be missing out on getting your bot lane more ahead, but that's a decision that you have to make as a jungler. If a lane is 0-5 and beyond saving, usually not spending time trying to bring them back is the smarter move, as the risk heavily outweighs the potential reward. I can power farm my way to a victory. Unless you're Graves, sorry, but just farming your jungle and even enemy jungle is not enough to win a game for your team anymore. Recently, Riot has changed the jungle to give a lot of catch-up XP for junglers that are behind in level, pushing junglers like Elise and Lee Sin with early gank pressure into the forefront of the meta once again. These early game junglers gank a lot, sacrificing their own farm and experience, and then they catch back up in a few short power farm bursts during mid to late game. The meta now calls for putting out early game pressure, and that's the easiest way to provide your team with the tools they need to win a game. I'm fed, but my laners lost, so I lost because of my team. I really don't have much to say about this, except if you are a fed jungler and you can't win your laner's lanes for them, then you're not properly using your lead. This video will explain how to not fall behind in applying jungle pressure to influence the map in the early stages of the game. The first thing every jungler needs to realize is that everything you do as a jungler is based off information. Decisions to gank, invade, or dive, basically what you choose to do, depend on where the minion waves are, if the enemy jungler can counter gank, what the matchups are in the lanes, etc, etc. For this reason, I like to say that in my opinion, jungle as a role requires the most knowledge to play at a certain level relative to other roles at that level. There is something junglers can do to prepare for the game before Summoner's Rift even loads, and this is to look up your team, as well as the enemy team, using LoL Nexus or op.gg. Do this to figure out who's on their main roles and who's autofilled on both teams. My personal opinion is to pour more attention on enemies who have their main role because they have the most potential of carrying with that role. Checking match history is also a great way of figuring out which lanes you should prioritize. Investing your time into helping a support main that got autofilled ADC might not be as worth as using that time to get your Fiora one trick ahead instead. The best way to gain information as a jungler is to use your F keys. Your F1 to F5 keys move the camera around the map, positioning it on your teammates. Your job as a jungler includes moving your camera around as often as you can to absorb information and base your pathing off the information you get. Some champions require you to kite your camps around, but while moving from one camp to another, quickly move your fingers over the F keys, cycle through, and check where lanes are, what lanes are pushing, etc. I will talk about utilizing the information you see in lanes like minion wave positioning, health and mana bars, and vision around the lane in the next video. Using F keys as you farm, as well as watching the minimap, also helps you react quickly to a gank if you happen to be nearby, as you should be if you're tracking the enemy jungler properly. It can be smart to drop a camp half completed and just run for the fight the second the enemy jungler shows up, as you can often clean fights up with a counter gank. I am personally a huge fan of mobility boots on junglers because they allow the jungler to move extremely quickly so that even if a fight starts at bot while the jungler is mid, he can still reach bot in time to contribute to the fight. Moving on to the actual game, I will talk about 3 methods to gain a lead and 2 more methods to maintain that lead during the early phases of the game. The first and simplest method is to just track the enemy jungler. An important information source that I don't see enough junglers utilizing is a tab menu. Especially in the first 5 to 10 minutes of a game, checking the CS of the enemy jungler gives valuable information on which camps he has cleared. The most basic check that everyone does is when the enemy jungler first shows on the map. By constantly knowing where the enemy jungler is, you can set up game-changing counter ganks, invades, and dives. Deep wards are also a great way to help you track the enemy jungler more accurately. How do you figure out where the enemy jungler is? By watching how the enemy jungle's CS number changes. Some basic information about the jungle. One side of the map is comprised of 4 small camps and 2 buffs, totaling 22 minions. 10 for Krugs, 6 for Raptors, 3 for Wolves, 1 for Gromp, and 1 for each of the buffs. The standard clear for many junglers is buff to Wolves to buff to gank, resulting in 5 CS and a fast level 3. Another recent clear that is popular for jungles that can start with AoE is Raptors to Red to Wolves to Blue to Gromp for a relatively fast level 4, and they show on the map with 12 CS during their first gank. Camps take 90 seconds to respawn, buffs take 5 minutes, and Scuttle takes 3 minutes. When you first see the enemy jungler gank, check how much farm he has to figure out which camps he has farmed. It's only reasonable that after the gank he will return to farm a camp he hasn't visited yet, or if he's a heavy early game jungler such as Lee Sin, he might look to invade one of your camps near the lane he ganked. From that information, infer how long it will take him to move on to his next camp or gank. It takes roughly 15 seconds per camp to clear early game, 40 seconds to walk from Krugs to Gromp, and 20 seconds to walk from buff to buff. The second method, a safe way of helping your team gain the lead that builds off the first method, is to follow the enemy jungler around the map. This usually works when you are slightly less confident in your abilities as a jungler, or when the enemy jungler's champion is stronger than yours in a 1v1. Your only job is to be near the lanes that the enemy jungler can potentially gank. For example, if mid lane is under threat of being ganked, try to farm Raptors or Wolves, don't spend that time farming your Gromp. If they do get ganked, counter gank, turn the fight, and win a lead off that. More proactive movements around the map will be covered in the next video. A tip for tracking enemy positioning after the first clear is to watch how the CS numbers on the enemy jungler change. Even if he clears minions from a lane, it's still relatively easy to track where he is. If the last time you see him he had 34 CS, and later on you see him show up with around 50 CS, it's pretty easy to assume that he gained that CS by farming his red side jungle. This means his blue side jungle is most likely up or coming up, and that's where he'll head after he recalls. However, if his CS after a minute or so hasn't changed more than 5, that means that he hasn't farmed his red side jungle camps and he will be in his red side jungle in the near future. The third method is to capitalize on the information that you have. If you're on blue side, your opponent started blue buff and he showed top with 5 CS during a level 3 gank, you know that his Krugs, Raptors, and Gromp are up. Something you can do here is, if he went to around half health during the gank and heads back into his jungle, you can invade his Raptors and subsequently his Krugs to see if you can catch him while he's farming a camp. This is a great way to steal a camp and also potentially get a kill. Of course, invade with caution, and while you do, drop some deep wards near camps that haven't been farmed or are going to respawn soon. One method to maintain a lead once you establish one is to put pressure onto the enemy jungler and steal his camps. To do this, you need deep vision, which you can get with invades alongside your support and mid after pushing a wave in the area between blue buff and Gromp or the Raptors bush. By watching which direction a jungler is moving when he steps on a ward, checking to see if he's used mana or if his health isn't full, as well as tracking the changes in his CS, retrace his steps and figure out roughly what time he cleared which camp and his general farming pattern. Try to be at a camp as it spawns, because oftentimes junglers pause between clears to gank, clear vision, etc. This is a great way of stealing a few camps from the enemy jungle when your lanes are already winning and applying pressure so that their enemy counterparts can't roam and collapse on you. A second method to maintaining a lead and extending it is clearing vision for your mid laner to roam with you and gank or dive side lanes. A 4-man dive bot is the biggest fear of all bot lanes, and if you manage to sweep out vision along the path, set up control wards, and move towards bot ahead of time such that you reach it as a minion wave is crashing into their turret, you can pick up a huge advantage such as a turret with a dragon and 2 kills. This step takes a lot of communication, and the jungler also needs a strong understanding of how minion waves move in a lane, which will be covered in the next video. A big mistake many people do on their first clear is farm both buffs and 2 small camps and then go for a gank. The reason this is a big mistake is because that extra small camp doesn't give you enough XP to push you to level 4, so all it does at the present time is stall your first gank. You could always go farm it later, there's no rush for you to get that camp before you gank, but ganking earlier can result in a kill. Of course, if you're stalling time because you see an approaching gank or counter gank opportunity, then farming is okay. Another mistake is clearing wolves but leaving Gromp up, and then next time clearing Gromp when wolves haven't spawned yet, then repeating that cycle. If you can, try to clear both camps in one segment of the map at a time so that you get to farm 2 camps every time you walk through instead of just 1. In very high elo, everyone already knows these concepts of following the enemy jungler around the map, setting up ganks, dives, and counter ganks, and junglers are capable of tracking the enemy jungler through CS and which lane seems gankable or in danger of being ganked. So at that point, the jungle becomes a mind game. Can you trick the enemy into thinking you are on one side of the map when you really are on the other, and bait the enemy jungler into a gank that you can counter gank? This takes very good vision control and game knowledge, as well as knowledge of clear times to pull off, but when successful it throws off even the highest elo players. To recap, information is the #1 priority for junglers. Information helps junglers evaluate risk versus potential reward, and also helps junglers make informed guesses about where the enemy jungler is. To gain more information about the current state of the map, use your F keys to look around the map. How this information can be put to use will be covered in the next video. Use tab to track how the enemy jungler's CS changes, and use the changes to infer which camps he has farmed, and where he is likely to go next if he is defaulting to farming. Krugs are 10 CS, Raptors are 6, Wolves are 3, and Gromp is 1, with each buff being 1 CS. Do some math early game, and figure out which camps the enemy has farmed prior to his first gank, and infer off that information where he is likely to go farming after he returns to his jungle. If, in a short amount of time, the enemy jungler's CS changes by between 6 and 16, that means that he has just farmed red side jungle, and the next side he will visit after recalling will be blue side jungle. Similarly, if the enemy jungler's CS changes by less than 5, that means that he has just farmed blue side jungle, and the next side he will visit after recalling will be red side jungle. Try to reach every fight you can. If you are tracking the enemy jungler correctly, you can counter gank every single one of his ganks and turn the fights in your team's favor to win your laner's lanes for them. If you know the enemy jungler is weaker than you or he is low in health, you can use the information of camps he has farmed to infer where he will be next and invade to steal a camp or to try and kill him. Do this with caution because lanes can collapse on you if your laners don't have enough pressure. To maintain a lead, make sure to get deep wards with either your mid or your support, and take enemy camps on spawn. A jungler's clear path can be pretty easily deduced based on CS changes, the direction he is walking, and the health and mana level he is at. Clear vision for your mid laner to roam with you, to dive either top or bot when the minion wave crashes into their turret. More information about recognizing when a minion wave will crash will be included in the next video. Dives are very big power swings that usually result in a turret and or a neutral objective like dragon on top of kills. Early game, don't farm for the sake of farming, farm to increase your level for a gank. If you just hit level 3 and you aren't close to level 4, farming one more camp does absolutely nothing to increase the likelihood of your gank succeeding. Try to clear both camps in one segment of the jungle together, so that every time you walk through your blue side jungle, you can clear both Wolves and Gromp, not just clear one camp and wait for the next one to spawn. This will increase efficiency in farming. In very high elo, the jungle game is all about mind gaming your opponent and baiting them into ganking a lane that you are ready to counter gank, or wait for a counter gank of a gank that isn't coming. This takes a lot of game knowledge as well as vision control. I may make a video specifically on this in the future. Thanks for watching the second video in Advanced League of Legends Macro Play. The next video will be coming out shortly as soon as I can find the time to make it. I'm also looking for a graphics designer. If any of you are interested, please contact me. Please drop a like if you found it helpful and subscribe for future videos. If you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments. I'll see you next time.